You've been told a lie your entire life, that without a woman by your side after 60, you're incomplete. Broken, destined to die lonely in some sad apartment eating canned soup. Here's the harsh truth. Nobody has the guts to tell you. The men who thrive the most after 60 are the ones who stopped chasing companionship out of fear and started choosing it from power. But there's a psychological trap buried in this idea that destroys most men who try it. Today, I'm going to expose it. Let's get into it. Let me ask you a direct question. Why do you think you need a woman right now? Not want, need, because there's a massive difference. And most men over 60 have never once sat down and honestly answered that question. They just feel the pull. The loneliness hits at 9 p.m. on a Tuesday. The house is quiet, and their brain starts whispering, "You need someone." But here's the brutal truth most men miss. That voice isn't love. It's not even loneliness. It's dependency. And it was programmed into you decades ago. Think about it. From the time you were a teenager, every movie, every song, every family gathering reinforced one message. A man is only as good as the woman standing next to him. Your worth was measured by whether you could attract and keep a partner. So what happens when you're 60, maybe divorced, maybe widowed, maybe just alone? Your brain doesn't suddenly delete 40 years of programming. It screams at you. It tells you something is wrong, that you're failing. But you're not failing. You're finally free. And you don't even realize it yet. See, here's what psychology tells us. There's a concept called emotional outsourcing. It means you've trained yourself over decades to let another person regulate your emotions. She made you feel calm. She made you feel valued. She made you feel like your life had structure. And when she's gone, you don't just miss her. You miss the emotional regulation she provided. You're not lonely for a woman. You're lonely for yourself, for the version of you that felt stable. That distinction changes everything. But understanding this is only half the battle, because there's a second psychological trap that hits men over 60 even harder. And if you fall into it, it will cost you your peace, your money, and your dignity. And I'll break it down in a moment. Here's where it gets dangerous. Once a man over 60 decides he needs a woman, he enters what I call scarcity panic mode. And this is where the real damage happens. Scarcity panic mode is simple. Your brain tells you time is running out. You're not 30 anymore. You can't afford to be picky. So you lower your standards. You tolerate disrespect. You start spending money you shouldn't spend. You ignore red flags you would have caught at 35 without blinking. Why? Because the fear of being alone at this age overrides your judgment. And women, particularly a certain type of woman, can smell this a mile away. Not all women, but the ones who target men in this exact position, they are surgically precise. She'll make you feel seen. She'll laugh at your jokes. She'll tell you you're different. And slowly, very slowly, and she'll start extracting time, energy, resources, control. This isn't me being cynical. This is pattern recognition. I've seen this play out hundreds of times. And the men who fall the hardest are always the ones who are the most intelligent, because they rationalize her behavior. They tell themselves, she's not like that. I'm smart enough to see through games. No, you're not. Not when scarcity panic is driving the bus. Now, here's the part most channels won't tell you. There's a third layer to this. A deeper reason why men over 60 cling to the idea of needing a woman. And it has nothing to do with companionship or loneliness. It's about something far more primal. Stay with me, because this next part is the key to unlocking everything. The real reason most men over 60 feel they need a woman is identity collapse. Think about your life. For 30, maybe 40 years, your identity was built on roles. Provider, husband, father, protector, career man. Now, the kids are grown, the career is winding down or done. The marriage might be over. And suddenly you're standing in a room full of mirrors with no reflection you recognize. That is terrifying, and when a man doesn't know who he is anymore, he reaches for the fastest identity anchor available, a woman. Because if she's there, if she needs you, wants you, depends on you, then you still matter. You still have a role, you're still someone. But here's the problem. You're building your identity on another person's presence, which means the moment she leaves, criticizes you, or simply has a bad day, but your entire sense of self shakes. That's not a relationship. That's emotional life support. And no high-value man at any age should be on life support. So if chasing a woman out of need is the trap, what's the alternative? What does a man who actually has it figured out after 60 look like? This is where the real strategy begins, and I promise you, it's not what you expect. Let me give you the framework. I call it the sovereign man position, and it has 3 pillars. Pillar 1, radical self-sufficiency. This doesn't mean becoming a hermit. It means learning to regulate your own emotions without outsourcing them to a partner. Here's what the weak man does. He feels lonely, so he calls her. He feels anxious, so he picks a fight just to get her attention. He feels purposeless, so he clings to her schedule, her plans, her life, because he has none of his own. Here's what the high-status man does. He feels lonely, so he sits with it. He doesn't run. He asks himself, what am I actually missing right now? Is it her, Or is it the feeling of being occupied? 9 times out of 10, it's the second one. And occupation is something you can create yourself. A project, a discipline, a physical challenge, something that demands your focus and returns a sense of mastery. The man who can sit alone in a room for 2 hours and feel completely at peace? That man is more attractive than 95% of men half his age, because he doesn't need anything from anyone, and that energy is magnetic. Pillar 2. Standards over desperation. Here's the shift. Stop asking, will she have me? Start asking, does she deserve access to my life? Read that again, because that single question rewires your entire approach. The weak man auditions for her approval. He buys dinners hoping she'll stay. He agrees with everything she says to avoid conflict. He shrinks himself to fit into her expectations. The high-status man? He evaluates, calmly, without emotion. He watches how she treats waitstaff. He notices if she asks about his life or only talks about hers. He pays attention to whether she adds peace to his world or chaos. And if she brings chaos, he walks. No drama, no long conversations about working on it. He simply removes access. That's not cold, that's clarity. And at your age, clarity is your greatest weapon. Pillar 3, purpose over partnership. This is the one that separates the men who decay after 60 from the men who become untouchable. You need a reason to wake up at 6 a.m. that has nothing to do with a woman. Nothing to do with anyone else, period. Maybe it's a business, maybe it's mentoring younger men. Maybe it's getting your body into the best shape it's been in 20 years. Maybe it's writing, building, creating. The specific thing doesn't matter. What matters is that it's yours, fully yours. No one can take it from you. No one can give you permission to do it. And no one's opinion changes whether you show up for it tomorrow. When you have that, when your life is so full and so intentional that a woman would be a compliment, not a cure, something shifts. You stop chasing. You stop performing, you stop negotiating for affection. And ironically, that's exactly when the right kind of woman shows up, not because you manifested her, but because you finally became the kind of man worth choosing. Now, let me be crystal clear about something, because I don't want you to misunderstand this message. I'm not saying women are bad. I'm not saying relationships are pointless. I'm not saying you should spend the rest of your life alone out of spite. What I am saying is this: the man who needs a woman is always at a disadvantage, always. Because need creates desperation. Desperation kills attraction, and dead attraction leads to dead relationships. But the man who wants a woman freely, from a position of completeness, that man gets to experience something most people never do. A relationship built on choice, not survival. And that's the only kind of relationship worth having after 60. Let me leave you with this. You've spent decades building, working, sacrificing, providing. You carried weight that most people will never understand. And you did it without asking for applause. Now you're in a chapter of life where, for the first time, the only person you have to answer to is yourself. That's not a tragedy. That's a privilege most people never earn. So stop treating your freedom like a problem to solve. Stop looking at an empty chair across the dinner table and seeing failure. Start seeing it for what it really is, a throne you finally get to sit in. You don't need a woman to be complete. You never did. You were just told you did by people who needed you to believe it so you'd keep performing. That performance is over. Now build the life that makes you proud. Not because someone is watching, but because you decided you're worth the effort. And if the right woman walks into that life, beautiful. Welcome her, but never ever hand her the keys. You are the architect. Act like it. Don't stay in the dark. Subscribe to She Decrypted to unlock her mind and master the game of attraction.